Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Good morning, everyone. Buen día.
Buen día. Good morning, Antonio.
Morning.
Buenos días, good morning.
Hi,
Yes.
good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So today I'm using another computer temporarily. So I hope not to have any problem. Welcome, everybody. As you know, we try to be very respectful of the timing. Okay. So I see that we have 1 minute. We have the Professor Mario Calderini with us. Not yet.
Good morning, Antonio.
Morning, Ula. Guten Morgen.
Hello, good morning to everyone. This is João.
Welcome, Marek. Joao, sorry. Welcome, Joao. Sorry.
That's okay.
I saw the microphone of Marek.
Good morning. Good morning, Marek.
Good
morning, everyone.
Okay. So for your information, we expected also today another speaker, but for personal reasons, he told me yesterday that he will not be able to join us today. So we will have only the Professor Mario Calderini from the Politecnico di Milano. That means that he will have more time to share with us his ideas. Okay, but I see that he is not yet with us. Karel, are you there? No. So it's Monday morning. It's clear that. So for your information, while we wait for the professor, we had agreed this weekend to make a jump in the organization of this group. And we are planning the creation of different, we are not going to call them subgroups, because as the Professor Athanasios shared with us, we must keep the holistic view, and it's not a question of a subgroup. Probably we could call them nodes of a complex network, more resilient. Anyway, we will create those kind of nodes specialized on specific topics in order to be able to go deeper on them. And we will use this group as the common link to curate the contents that every node and every participant share here. Okay, this is the draft of the new organization that we are working on, and we will share it during the next days. Buongiorno, Mario Calderini, Professor. We cannot hear you. Can you? Hello. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Welcome. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, thank you to you for joining us. Okay. You are the main speaker today, because the other one, for personal reason, has not been able to join us. So you have 20 minutes to share your ideas with us if you want. Okay.
Okay, very good.
That's very good. Yeah. So I will give you the capacity to present if you want. Okay. Could you try it now? Are you able to share your screen? Now.
Yes, yes, but I have since I had hello, Mr. Yes, since I had I have a slight connection problem now, but unfortunately, since I suppose that 10 minutes, I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation specific for that. I assumed that was a free speaking, but I have a presentation of the model, but that is unfortunately in Italian. So I may use that just for the pictorial part and then speak on that if you don't mind. I just ask you to allow me 1 second because I have a small internet connection problem, I believe. Sorry about that.
No problem. We can wait. So while we wait, I continue speaking about the new organization. We are going to describe it in a document between today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and we will share it with all the group beginning one of the next sessions. Okay, just for your information. But anyway, we continue working on a voluntary basis, but we will try to give the group a technical office just to better reflects the ideas and the work that every one of you is doing and sharing here. Okay, and we will also facilitate the parallel work of those different nodes. But as the professor Athanasios said, okay, we need to take special care of the linking between different areas of specialty, if you want to call them, or ecosystem, industrial ecosystem, or social challenges. I don't know how to call them. Okay, different nodes. Okay, so that would be taken in a special consideration, okay, in our organization, just to be sure that we locate members of companies or resources on every one of the nodes that could be very helpful for the other ones, that could share resources or capacities with other areas of specialties. You could say that could be flexible or flexibly applied to other needs or missing links, or that's the main idea. There is some here that are very scientific in their approach, could give those nodes another names. I don't have here because I don't have here the name that you applied from Chemic yesterday, but yeah, that's the main idea, to be more resilient or stronger in our approaches through this kind of holistic view. Are you ready, Professor?
Yes, yes, and sorry for this. Can you see my screen now with the presentation called Unlock?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Excellent, and I apologize for having this presentation in Italian, but as I said, I assumed that was just a 10-minute talk, so I didn't think it was a good idea to have a presentation, but yes. So let me introduce the reason behind using the Unlock model and where it comes from. as you say, Italy has been severely hit by the crisis. And at a certain point, we had the impression that the way the crisis was managed was a bit sectorial. Different solutions were developed in different contexts. So tourism was working on its own solutions or attempt of solutions. The manufacturing industry was doing the same. So many detached solutions that were not providing a complex and unique framework for looking to a global optimum. So everyone was looking for its own local optimization, the best solution for its problem, but the combination of the different solutions was not compatible with a global solution. And when I talk about solution, I talk about properly managing the phase 2 of the crisis. That is what is happening exactly this morning in Italy. That is what we call starting again, la ripartenza, right? So at a certain point at Politecnico, we thought that we needed to change perspective, and the change of perspective was about looking at the global, at the whole picture, the global framework, putting all the different solutions together and see how the different solutions for the manufacturing industry, for managing the transportation system, for reopening schools could work all together. And by the way, in this rather selfish way of looking for different solutions, there were crucial sectors that were completely forgotten, strangely enough. Some of those absolutely crucial, not only for a general principle of justice, but also because they were a building block of the exit strategy of the country out of the crisis. And in particular, I make reference to the education system, schools, and the third sector and welfare, that for many weeks were completely forgotten when talking about starting different industries again. Forgetting to consider that this crisis is a very peculiar crisis for at least two reasons. One reason is that it's not the energetic crisis of 1973. It's not Lehman Brothers' broader financial crisis. It's not an earthquake. It's not something that happens and the morning after you look at the destruction and you make up your recovery plan. This crisis happens every day, and every day you have to change your plans, and you learn different things about the pandemic. This is the first reason. The second reason, and it is actually what we have in mind when we developed this model that we offered to the Mr. Colau task force, that you know is the task force that is in charge of designing the recovery strategy for the country. The other reason was that this is actually a human-centered crisis. The individuals are the locus of the crisis, and the fact that it's a human or individual-centered crisis make the crisis very complex, because it ties in, it bundles in a very complex way different problems. and so you cannot face different problems separately, detachedly, but what you have to consider is fully interconnected system, where if you move one thing in one sector, you have unpredictable effects on different sectors. This is and basically, as you can see, the claim of our unlock model is sorry for having it in Italian, but basically is starting again is a common good, and we need to manage it as such. So the idea is there is a common good that is our collective good, consisting in our ability to start a new economic phase, and our, of course, social life. So I will skip this, and I'll tell you, as you can see on the right, basically we developed a simulation model that is based on system dynamics, and this system dynamics model is made of 8 subsystems. That is the individual subsystem, the enterprise subsystem, labor subsystem, health and care subsystem, transportation subsystem, school and education, welfare, and finance. And what a subsystem is basically something like that is not readable, neither in English nor in Italian, but this is just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. It is basically a model that is based on the theory of systems, something that economists may remember was developed by Forrester in the late 60s at MIT, a model that is not particularly popular in economics at the moment, but of course it's a very practical and manageable way to keep a very complex and interconnected system, dynamic system, and to model it, and to make and when you run it, you're able to see where the critical variables are. So basically we developed this system, and the idea was, well, if you go on by single proposals, for example, let's start different industries by formal codes. That means that you do not start with bars and restaurants, but you will start with business to business activities, or you just start by essential services, and so on and so forth. You have a crisis in specific variables, and those specific variables in this case, to make a very long story short, we understood were transportation system and schools. Because what's happening in Italy right now is that today many industries and many companies will open, and the transportation system is now being managed at 25% of its capacity. So it's a 75% reduction, and schools are still closed. So the idea is that this is creating a huge problem, and the problem is that children are at home, and people are not free to go to work. So the idea is that if you just talk about reopening the firms, you probably have your system out of control. So basically with this model, what you do is put you start with a solution and you see what happens in all different subsystems. You see where are the bottlenecks and the parts of the systems that are under an excessive pressure and will end up locking or stopping the whole system to work. So this system, when you run this system, you understand what you have to do with transportation and with school. But of course, this system will allow you to understand that the night, talking about starting again, and of course, as we assume as an exogenous and given constraint, the indications and the prescription that are given by the health task force that is in charge of saying we can start or we cannot start, or we can start at this or those conditions. So basically, when you start this model, you are always able, you are also able to see that the dark is not as dark as it may seem. For example, the call-out task force, that is the main task force that is in charge of economic recovery, decided that this morning will open a very large part of the manufacturing industry, and this means basically 4.5 million workers going to work. And with 4.5 million people going to work and the transportation system running at 25% of its capacity and the schools closed, you may easily predict that in a couple of hours from now, the system is completely broken. Actually, this simulation model will allow you to tell that the situation is not so terrible, or if you want, it is, but not in immediate terms, because it's not true that when you say, okay, these industries can reopen, 4.5 million people will go to work for different reasons. The first one is that there are companies and activities that cannot restart, basically because they do not have raw materials, they have broken supply chains, they do not have internal demand, they do not have an international demand for their products and services. So it's not true that 4.5 million will go to work this morning, and our economic model will allow us to predict that the actual number of people traveling to work, and therefore we can see that the transportation system will not be that so under pressure as you might expect, and the same is for the welfare system. The other important aspect in this simulation is that I think the big merit of this model that was used by the call-out task force is that it shed a light. They put the right importance on the role of schools and education. So the huge debate was partly triggered by the simulation that we were able to run through this model, is that we were able to put schools and the education system, kindergartens and primary schools at the very center of the new startup of the productive system. And so I would say that the urgent part of the story now is how can we reopen and how the fact that the schools are closed will affect the productive and economic system. In practice, what we do, this is the picture. So our idea is that Pacchetto A and Pacchetto B means these are portfolio of different proposals or initiatives that the government may take. And with these proposals, we feed the dynamic systems and the different subsystems, and through a very complex network of interconnections, we are able to predict if the social system, the economic system, and of course the spread of the epidemic will be or won't be under control. This is what the model does. The model is not a software system, so it cannot be used or run independently from the competencies, the single competencies that have generated the model. We will not provide forecast for the spread or the diffusion of the epidemics, and we take the prevention indications as given. So let me show. Basically, this is what the system will do. In the column, you have the different subsystems, and the pale blue columns on the right side of the screen are the performance of the social system, the performance of the economic system, and the performance in terms of managing the epidemic. And then you will have a priority index by proposal on the right side of the screen. So we will start with a single proposal, for example, concerning the corporate subsystem. And the idea is, for example, this proposal is we reopen all the B2B businesses in Italy. The model will give you qualitative and quantitative prediction of the impact on the different subsystems and different performances on the three main dimension. And of course, what we see is that if you manage this proposal as a single proposal, you will unbalance and the whole system. Because yes, it will improve a lot the performance of the economic system, but of course, the proper management of the spread of the epidemics is at risk of getting out of control. So what you can do is you build a sort of thick bundle of proposals. So here, for example, you have a couple of proposals concerning the industry, reopening the B2B activities, or you start the trade and commercial services. You have specific measures concerning the transportation system. So, for example, this one is allowing people just with managing people on transportation system just with the electronic ticketing and booking single seat booking on the transportation system. Then, for an example, as an example, you have in the welfare system the organization of micro welfare measures like a micro kindergarten at the local level, and then the school. The idea is partial opening in June and July for testing new procedures and new distance learning devices for September. So it's just an example of bundling in a set of proposals. What you see is that all these proposals have different effects on the performance of social, economic, and epidemic performance and system. but the whole point of the story is through this model, if you properly bundle this proposal, if you build a balanced portfolio of proposal, what you have is that the different proposal will compensate one each other, and if you are quite accurate in putting together the different proposals, you have a portfolio impact that can be managed and have a positive effect within the strategy, the exit strategy of the country from the epidemic and the economic performance of the system. So the whole point is recovery strategy is a common good. We need to deal with it as such. So what we have to do is not working for single proposal, and not even more important, not putting the single sectors of the economic system and of society one against each other, but we need to work by portfolio of proposals, because if you are accurate in selecting and bundling in different proposals, we can have better global strategies that will help us to recover. So basically, this is what the model is for. Of course, it's something that was developed in 3 weeks. It's not terribly data intensive at the moment. There is a lot of qualitative parts, but the real added value of this model is giving a systemic perspective on the global optimization process that you need to properly manage the exit strategy from the crisis. It allows you to focus on bottlenecks and critical variables in the system. My last comment is this is the so-called phase 2 part. That is a scenario that goes from 6 months from the start of the crisis to the 18th month. And of course, what we have to do is think of what comes next, the phase 3. There is another principle that we are trying to use and that we are suggesting to the different task forces that are at work in the country. That is, do not make the big mistake. Let's not make the big mistake of thinking that we were coming from a good situation. The Italian productive system was in a very weak situation, and our ambition should not to go back to what we used to be in February. We need to aim at something much better than that. And in order to do so, we need to understand that just below the crisis, there are huge opportunities. Let me give you a few examples of the recovery strategy that we are thinking of. Italy, of course, has a huge potential in the tourism industry. At the moment, you have assets like infrastructures, hotels, let's say all the real estate that is related to the tourism activity, and what we can do is, of course, help these people that have big personal problems related to the fact that they are not able to manage their activity. But the idea is, why don't we start a huge program of refurbishing and restructuring all our assets in the tourism industry, so that when we start again, we have a modern infrastructure for tourism, and in the meanwhile, we help the building and construction industry in the short term, so that we have a positive effect on employment and in the and a very important economic effect for individuals working in this. So, and the same is for restructuring schools and so on and so forth. So we have different opportunities. The other opportunity that we are working on is the post phase 2 phase, where the welfare system and the third sector and social entrepreneurship is in huge troubles at the moment. Just to give you one very short example, the cooperative system in Italy is managing almost 60% of our kindergartens, so the structures that take care of our children between 0 and 6 years. At the moment, the forecast is that in the next 3 months, 50% of them will default, and this means that between 30 and 40% of kindergartens, so a huge pillar of our welfare system, will not reopen in September, with a huge problem for industry and all the productive system. So what we have to do is make a for entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurial welfare. And there again, it's a gold mine of opportunities. What's happening now? Care is changing. Be a new of, for example, care at all elderly people's home. The people in 3 weeks have understood that there is a different way to buy food than taking the car and driving to the superstore on a Saturday afternoon, but there is a delivery opportunity that has a huge social value. So the disruption of the distribution supply chain is a huge opportunity for the welfare system. So through this model, we are also preparing the so-called phase 3 and trying to design a new industrial policy for post-COVID. It's obvious in this context that we know very well that social entrepreneurship, especially when it has to be capital intensive and technology intensive, needs density, needs a thick ecosystem, needs clustering policies, needs place-based policies, and of course a huge pillar in these recovery strategies, as I mentioned in our last meeting, is that we need to find a new way to design and manage social entrepreneurship or social economy clusters and ecosystem. So a new generation of technology transfer that is suitable to help social entrepreneurship, new models of open innovation for the social economy. There are a number of different very interesting initiatives that have to be experimented in order to see whether we are able to build a new industrial policy leveraging on the potential of social economy. This is important, my very last comment, because the future is rather uncertain in this perspective. If you think let's say, end of February, we were in the very middle of the hype of sustainability and new corporate social responsibility and social or responsible finance, social or responsible corporation, and the idea was, okay, the financial institutions and corporation can take care of big global societal challenges, right? That was end of February. Then in 2 months, we saw that the role of the state came back very strong to be important, and that and probably something that we understood to be immensely important in these 2 months. So we have this very contradictory situation in which end of February we thought that the solution to social and environmental problem was in the hands of private financial institutions and corporations. In 2 months, the state is back again as a very important ingredient of our welfare and economy. So a new big role for the state. So what comes next following this new fusion or this new synthesis of corporate social, corporate citizenship, and responsible finance, and the new huge role in the state of this crisis? So I think this is the crucial conceptual point. What is the model next? And what is the role of the third sector and the social economy in this story? Is it a new liberal socialism? Is it what someone called the community capitalism? There are different options, and I think we need to think very carefully about that, because the way we design our next future industrial policy heavily depends on the idea of a corporation, of financial institution, and of society that we have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie mille, Professor Mario Calderini. It has been a very long intervention, but I thought that it was important to hear you.
Sorry.
No. It's I think that everyone understands that your ideas are important and also very inspiring, provocative. Okay, so the floor is now for the rest of the attendants. Comments, please. Just 3 minutes maximum. Okay, comments from everyone.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Professor Mario Calderini. Thank you very much for the presentation and your model. I think I have some questions because I'm not sure that it's completely clear for me. So if I understood well, according to your model, you start from a given scenario and then you see the global picture. So it means that the variables are fixed. You start from an hypothesis and you see how these different subsystems interact between them and which maths you apply. You apply probabilistic, statistics. It's not clear exactly because it's fixed variables from a given situation and you see how they interact with each other. And do you think that can be also possible to compare or give more flexibility to variables? So some of them can be free and make more or see what happens if there is one extra phenomenon that you didn't consider at the beginning or something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Of course. Shall I answer question by question, or shall I collect more, Antonio?
No, question by question, please.
Okay. Yeah, of course, it's a good point. As I say, there was developed in less than 3 weeks, so it is a fixed variable model. Many of the subsystems are built in a way that the variables are statistically treated. So we have a probabilistic inference of their effect on other subsystems. But indeed, at the moment, this model is not able to endogenously generate new proposals and new variables. So you are not able to use it as a generator of important variables that we missed. But of course, we consider it to be a crucial development point, but it has to go on during the summer. We work under very, very strong urgency constraints. So the point now, yes, it's that you trigger the system with a given proposal, with the given variables, and you see how it reacts. And the real merit of the system at the moment, when you use it this way, is to show which variables are critical in other subsystems. So you are able to see connections that are not simple to see just by logic or by your own imagination. So the point is, the real output of the model is where scarce variables or scarce resources are in the whole subsystem. The next step is keeping some variables free, indeed.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Karel. No, we cannot hear, Karel.
Okay, sorry. Thank
Now.
you very much, Mario. Again, very enlightening. I have two small questions. The first one is about the model itself. It's of course a governance model from the point of view of the government, but is it also some kind of transferable, or is there a second version that might be applied to smaller ecosystems? For example, a local government, but also, for example, a more industrial ecosystem or system, for example, a cluster, because you have some clusters that are multi-sectoral, where also different parameters are connected with each other, not necessarily for a crisis like this, but also as some kind of a problem-solving tool or a future-looking tool, how a cluster might decide its strategy for the future. That's the first question. And the second is related to the social economy, because last Friday you were also present in our expert group on social economy clusters, and there we had a quite tough discussion about resilience of social economy. Now I hear you somehow analyzing that the cooperative sector, the crashes will have serious problems. Could you explain why, or what is the issue in their model? Is it the revenue private or public, or how is, because 50% of 60% is quite a big proportion in the whole system, so that is quite disastrous. And what is the real reason behind, and is the fact that social economy is taking care of that type of crashes, is it an added value or not? Because as I said, 50% is quite a lot. Thank you very much.
Yes, Carol. Well, let me be very open in this environment. When we had this very long hearing in the Mr. Colau task force, that is the task force that was set up by our Prime Minister, we were a bit skeptical on, and we were very hypercritical ourselves on the potential of our model. Because of course there are many limitations, and we knew that there are different things that we can develop, many of which you have mentioned for the next future. But when we were there, we were surprised to understand what was the real potential of our model that now has to be used by the single individuals that have designed it. It's not yet self-standing. Can you hear me? Hello?
We are hearing you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Please.
Yeah, so the potential of this model at the moment is to be a competence integrator. Because when we put this model and we run it in front of the different members of the task force, Miss Mazzucato talking about the role of the entrepreneurial state, another one talking about the role of the education system, and so on and so forth. These people were not able to talk to each other, and working on a complex and global system dynamics model allowed them to frame in their vision and their competencies in a global picture. And this is the big role of this model. I think that in these next 3 months we need to work on that. There are subsystems that need to be analyzed in depth. It's in some of the subsystems have a very simplistic version of the reality, even oversimplistic. And so what we plan now, after the emergency is gone, we need to develop more accurately different subsystems and to make it a simulation model that can be operated independently by the panel group that has generated it. Of course, there is a huge validation problem, because at the moment the validation is not, let's say, empirical. The validation is through the panel of experts that have generated the different hypotheses that link the different subsystems and the different variables within the subsystem. So we need to face the validation problems soon. And the last comment is that yes, I think that there is a potential, but we will be able to deploy the potential of this system and to go in the direction that you suggest when we decide we are not using it for phase 2. We finished the model last week, and today phase 2 is starting in Italy. So of course, that was everything was made in a hurry. I think the real potential for this is the phase 3 part, because the old industrial policy decision you take are strictly interrelated in the different sectors, and so you can prevent crisis and leverage on opportunities by using this model. So yes, we'll see in the next future which kind of development we can think of. As far as the social economy, the social economy now is divided into very clear parts. 50% is under a huge pressure, and it's crisis for a specific reason, that they have had to face huge operating costs given prevention, given the fact that they had to work under very inefficient conditions. So they have revenues, but they have huge operating costs. And the problem is that these organizations were very financially weak. And so the risk of default, they were small and financially weak. So the risk of default is very high. There is another 50% of the social economy that has completely stopped its activities, zero revenues. And again, this is another problem. So no operating costs, but zero revenues. And again, if you apply this condition to organizations that were very weak financially, very small, they were very late in facing the scaling up problem, in the use of technologies. This weakness will be reflected in the fact that not many of them will be able to survive. So there is the urgency of helping them right now with financial measures and cash and capitalization or whatever, and then think of a new future. What is the reason why they arrived to this crisis so weak financially and technologically? The crisis is that the dependence on the public system, on the public procurement system, was too heavy, too strong, and the protection that the public procurement system gave to the social economy was not good to force them to become stronger, to have a proper incentive to scaling up, to build solid financial structures. So I think that the big issue in the next future is to think of a new relationship between the third sector, social entrepreneurship, and the public procurement, or in general, the public system. Otherwise, we will always have weak entities.
Thank you very much. I have a question. I think that Karel told the same question, but I didn't hear the clear answer. Will this model be able to apply to the European level, or some countries, or different countries, or cluster? How much scalable is it?
Now, I will answer talking about Italy, and then moving to the European level. We were asked to develop this model for the national level. But at the end of the day, there is no specific national level design feature that would characterize this model as a national model. It's a conceptual framework at the moment. The point is that that was developed in a school of engineering at the end of the day, although it was a school of management, but is the largest engineering school in Italy. So it works on a typical engineering-based precautionary principle. That means, and of course there are coefficients that will tell you what is your safety zone that you can move in. And for example, we found ourselves to apply it with different parameters, safety parameters, and so with very different implication in the different Italian regions according to the situation of the epidemic. So I don't see any problem in applying it at a European level in principle. As of today, international trade is an exogenous variable, is an external factor that condition the execution of the model. I think that this can be a problem right now, but I think this problem can be faced quite easily to bring it at European level. But my point is that I wouldn't see this model applied to the European level as such. I think that the model performs at its best when applied to small microsystem or cluster, if you want. So, for example, if you apply at a cluster scale, at a regional scale, or even sub-regional scale, where you can have real data on on flows of people on transportation system, real data on schools. If you can get down to a level where you have real-time data, it gives the potential. So my expectation for the future is that this model would be very useful when you apply it cluster by cluster, of course, all around Europe, but by cluster and not modeling Europe as a whole system.
Thank you very much. More questions or comments?
Can I make one brief question, Antonio, if that's possible? Okay.
Go on.
Thank you very much, Professor Mario Calderini. It was a very good intervention. You spoke about the Mariana Mazzucato idea of innovative state and entrepreneurship government. Do you think that in Italy you have the experience of the Distrito Industriale and social innovation, as you spoke? This innovative and entrepreneurial state will work in the future?
So, excellent question. As you know, Ms. Mazzucato was asked by our Prime Minister to become his senior advisor. And I will answer by telling you the reaction of economists and experts in Italy. Of course, they are a big fan of the entrepreneurial state of Ms. Mazzucato. There are two main problems, I think. I think the most typical reaction, and there are very good reasons for such a reaction, is that her idea, whatever you think in theory of her idea, the point is that you need a sort of efficient public administration and a quite evoluted public administration in managing innovation policies, which is not the case in Italy, of course, maybe in other European countries, but not in Italy. It's a very centralized way of managing innovation policies, and the local level has never found a proper identity in managing place-based innovation policies. So the big point, the big criticism and problem with Mariana Mazzucato ideas, in my opinion, is execution, pure execution by the public administration part. Every single innovation policy in Italy has been designed around the myth of industrial districts back in the late 60s, the Beccantini story. I think that in Italian innovation policies and in the application of Mazzucato ideas, we need to ask ourselves a huge question, that is, does proximity still matter in Italian innovation policies? I think that sometimes the notion of proximity, what I say is that technological district or innovation district that has been the big idea in Italian innovation policies, they are like the stars. You see their light much late, and the light you see is actually the sign of something that has happened maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I see the Italian innovation system working with industrial clusters with a picture that is mainly out of date. And when you hear about the Motor Valley in Emilia-Romagna, when you hear about the Etna Valley in Sicily and all this stuff, I think that and you see these initiatives molded around the myth of the Silicon Valley, trying to replicate the Silicon Valley all around Italy is a dangerous story. So I think that there are large parts of Italy in which you have just two real entrepreneurial networks that can be exploited. One is the social entrepreneurship network, and in the other one is the so-called small business network. And that is where you have to start again. The traditional notion of technological district, as Beccatini describes it, with a big role of large companies and universities, is largely overstated. And I think that one good point in the Mariana Mazzucato ideas is that let's try to design new clusters that are not based on a science push idea of technology transfer. We should stop looking at very small and inefficient universities, local universities, as if they were Berkeley or Stanford, where you just squeeze their knowledge and the knowledge generates economic development at a local basis. We need to find bottom-up different ways to aggregate cluster and to create value in clusters. So this is my idea. Thank you
very much. It's 9:30. We should close. There is people that need to leave. I will allow just one last question, okay, and we will proceed to close. Ula, do you have a comment?
I'm very much seeing the what was presented today and what we discussed with Athanasius on Thursday, and this need for a holistic approach, and that one system affects the other system, and that's why you need to have this systems thinking. I think this is for me a very important step, and that's why also when Antonio in the beginning you said that you have abandoned the subgroups, and you might remember that I was a bit hesitant because I think also the strength of this group lies in the holistic approach, and I think we got a confirmation of this by Professor Calderini's presentation today. So I'm very pleased with what was described, but now of course comes the translation into the implementation. How can we use it concretely for the recovery strategy? But thanks a lot for this very good presentation, very interesting.
That's the critical question. Yes, how can we use that and on a different level? How can we take your ideas and put them on a, I don't know, a European level, or perhaps by ecosystems or by cluster, by the regions, but that will be really helpful. So, Carlos, the last one. Now?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. No.
Yes. Briefly, good morning. No.
Yes. There is some delay, but speak, please.
Yes. Now you are listening me?
Yes.
You can listen or not?
Yes. With delay, but don't worry.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I wanted to congratulate Professor Calderini. This kind of models are very necessary to have an holistic approach, and I think that that kind of approach could be enhanced by the support of responsible research and innovation line from age 2020 and age and Horizon Europe. In this sense, this bottom-up approach for me is the key for a more inclusive response to COVID and to create not only in the short term, but also in the mid and long term, new resilient ecosystems. And in this sense, I am very much supporting this kind of approach, and I think that we have to see the quick parallel to enhance this kind of surveys, this kind of models.
Thank you.
Let me answer, because I think it's just 1 second. I chair the International Advisory Board for Regione Lombardia on responsible research and innovation. And we just delivered the flash recommendation document. It is bound to appear on Nature in the next weeks, because I'm be happy to share it with you, because I think that responsible and inclusive innovation strategy is the key in properly managing our transition to a new world or situation. So absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
Please send the document to us, and we will share it in the ECCP Forum. I want to remember everyone that we have the ECCP for COVID-19 Forum as a place to exchange public information. So you could upload it just directly there, or send it to me, and I will share. Thank you, everybody. As every day, fortunately, that was very interesting. You know that we will share the video immediately, as soon, well, in 2 hours, something like that, as soon as it is processed. You are very, very welcome, Professor Mario Calderini, and everybody. It's a pity that we didn't have enough time to discuss every possibility, but you can continue discussing through the forum or through the Slack. You know that we have for private discussion with another platform. Okay. Anyway, we will.
And I want to thank you for inviting me so many times, and I'll be delighted to be with you in the silent mode in the audience. So whenever I'll be happy to share and listen.
You are invited to every session. Everyone is invited to every session. Okay. It's a pity that we are so much people that it's possible to hear every one of you, but you are invited. Okay. You have the program. For example, tomorrow we will meet with the SMEs Envoys Network. It's a very important meeting because this is the link to the official representative of every member state on SMEs policies. And I think it's important to have as much of you there tomorrow with us, just to let them know and explain and hear what they are doing and study how to link with those official representatives. Okay. Anyway, thank you again, and you will be most welcome in the next sessions. Ciao.
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.